Additional lines, just $30 each. Click, call, or visit a Spectrum store today.
Even the mighty might not see it coming. It's prediabetes, and it captures 1 in 3 adults. But you can escape. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test to know where you stand and prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. Be your own hero on smartphones everywhere at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Spectrum News Plus. Local stories, connecting communities. Streaming now on the Spectrum News app and free with your Spectrum subscription.
I'm Sharon Tazwell. Here's your Spectrum News at 90. President Trump Thursday signing an executive order to start the process of dismantling the Department of Education. Now, the move comes after the administration cut nearly 50% of the department's staff earlier this year. Trump says education should be left up to the states.
The Democrats know it's right, and I hope they're going to be voting for it because ultimately it may come before them.
Federal investigators issued 4 urgent safety recommendations to bridge owners Thursday during an update on the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse. Next week marks 1 year since a cargo ship crashed into the bridge, killing 6 construction workers. The NTSB is urging the owners of 68 bridges across 19 states to perform a vulnerability assessment. Authorities say it's an assessment Maryland officials never did with the Key Bridge.
Not only did MDTA fail to conduct the vulnerability assessment on the Key Bridge, they did not provide, nor were they able to provide, the NTSB with the data needed to conduct the assessment.
March Madness is officially here. The round of 64 kicked off Thursday in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. 32 teams are taking the court across 16 games. Their first round of the women's tournament kicks off Friday. And that's a look at your Spectrum News in 90.
I'm meteorologist Brittany Hamilton. As we take a look at the big picture, we do have some red flag warnings for fire concerns with very dry conditions and a lot of wind, also some rain moving through parts of the Great Lakes and into the Northeast. We'll see more of that as we go through Friday and the early part of the weekend. Spring did begin earlier in the day, so it's here, and we will be talking about another warm up for many areas.
Today we take a very historic action that was 45 years in the making. In a few moments, I will sign an executive order to begin eliminating the Federal Department of Education once and for all.
President Donald Trump signing an executive order Thursday calling for the dismantling of the Education Department. The move likely to kick off a legal battle and already garnering swift opposition from Democrats. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sharon Tazwell. The executive action advances a campaign promise by the president, who has criticized the Education Department as wasteful and polluted by liberal ideology. He says he wants to return education to the states. However, completing its dismantling would take an act of Congress, which created the department in 1979. And Trump says it's a matter of educating America's youth.
And we have to get our children educated. We're not doing well with the world of education in this country, and we haven't for a long time.
Our national political reporter, Taylor Papalaris, joins us from the White House with more. Taylor, can you explain the president's plans for the Education Department?
Yeah, well, Sharon, this is interesting, and it's a bit unprecedented because this is a department that was created by Congress and funded by Congress, so any president cannot just close it. Congress would have to formally close it. So what President Trump outlined in this executive order is he's not closing the Education Department, but he's drastically shrinking it. He's going to be sending a lot of funding directly to each individual state to basically take on themselves and figure it out. He's going to be letting go much of the federal workforce that's here in Washington, over 4,000 employees, and he's going to keep a few kind of minor key functions that the department exists on, things like Pell Grants and student loan navigation in place, but otherwise they're kind of sending this back out to the states. So legal challenges are expected. It's unclear how quickly all of this will take place, but he campaigned long on trying to close this department, and while the votes aren't there in Congress right now for him to do that, he's basically doing the next, the next thing.
So Taylor, you spoke directly to Education Secretary Linda McMahon after the signing. What did she have to say, and what are critics saying about the plan to shut down the agency?
Yeah, this was an interesting conversation with the secretary, literally in the East Room of the White House behind me, moments after this signing. She said that she fully supports what the president is doing. She wants to essentially work herself out of a job. I asked her, how fast will this all take place, and how much of the Department of Education will be left after all of this? And she said they want to move quickly. They will keep these key functions in place so that services won't be disrupted. She insisted to me that as money gets siphoned directly to the states, that services won't be disrupted, that families rely on, and that this could, in her view, improve service. But to your point about critics, there are a lot of teachers unions and educational advocates who are really concerned about this, view the federal government as kind of an important part of oversight to help different states who handle education differently. The path forward is uncertain. That's why they're expecting to file these lawsuits that could potentially hold a lot of this up moving forward.
Yeah, this story is far from over. Taylor Papalaris from the White House. Thanks. A federal judge is giving the Trump administration a new deadline to provide specific information regarding deportation flights carried out last weekend. And it comes as border czar Tom Homan is touting 40,000 migrant arrests since President Trump took office. Our national reporter Evan Kozlov joins us now from Washington. Evan, Judge James Boasberg is giving the Department of Justice another 24 hours to provide documents or invoke what's called the state secret privilege. Evan, break this down for us.
Right, so this is the new ruling right here. It's just 3 pages long and it's full of legalese, but it's clear that the judge's patience is running thin here. At one point, the judge, that's James Boasberg, called the government's response, quote, woefully insufficient. He gave the government a new deadline of Friday morning to either hand over the information requested about those deportations or invoke what's called the state secrets privilege to avoid the release. And this legal fight matters for 2 big reasons. First off, of course, it's about the content of the disagreement, namely, should the federal government be able to use this wartime authority, the Alien Enemies Act, to deport suspected gang members? But perhaps just as important, many legal analysts see this as a test of the judiciary's ability to hold the White House in check and whether the administration is willing to defy a court order or not, Sharon.
Evan, turning to the Russia-Ukraine war, Washington, Moscow, and Kyiv are expected to send officials to Saudi Arabia for ceasefire negotiations this week. What can we expect to see in the coming days?
Well, the Trump administration is really trying to play the role of a peacemaker. In just the last few days, President Trump held 2 separate phone calls, first with Russian President Vladimir Putin and then with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. And both Ukraine and Russia agreed in principle on Wednesday to a limited ceasefire, but it's not immediately clear when this would begin and which targets would be off limits. And while these negotiations are a reason for some optimism, we should note that the attacks have not stopped. Both sides are still launching hundreds of drone attacks overnight. And Sharon, listen to this. A Ukraine regional leader said that among the targets was a street that translates as Peace Street.
Interesting. Wow. Evan Kozlov in Washington. Thanks.
Thank you.
A federal judge Thursday temporarily blocked Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency from Social Security Administration systems that hold personal data on millions of Americans. The ruling also requires a team to delete any personal data they may have. The administration continues to defend DOJ, saying the team is only targeting waste and fraud in the federal government. The NTSB provides new details of the deadly Baltimore bridge collapse, how the latest findings impact multiple bridges across the U.S. Just ahead.
We said we'd never break the 3-second rule. Never do that. And never become a minivan mom.
Hey, Chris.
As parents, we say never a lot, but never happens. happens. So when you say you'd never leave your child in a hot car, know it can happen. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
I really am in the middle of nowhere. Every day is different. Chores, come on, homeschooling. And then I fit in the rug business. I just got a new batch of rugs that I'd love to show you. I have a website, and a lot of what I do is sharing my home life. Mommy's leaving. Reliable, high-speed internet is the foundation of our business. Spectrum was great. They went out of their way to make sure that I was okay and I was taken care of. Shoo! And that's the awesomeness of having Spectrum.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. A lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
The sad reality is fentanyl is being mixed into everything now.
More kitchen now.
You're not gonna get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Welcome back to your Weather on the Ones. I'm meteorologist Brittany Hamilton. You can see the snow and also the wind in this video coming in from Buffalo County, Nebraska, where they had blizzard conditions the past couple of days and quite a bit of snow that actually accumulated in areas like Kansas. Lenora picked up a foot of snow, Garland over 8 inches of snow, Sioux Rapids around 8 inches, and then this moved into parts of the upper Midwest, La Crosse at 8.5 inches of snow, and Chicago saw a little bit of snow from this as well, close to 2 inches. Now, as we look at the bigger picture here, that system has moved to the east. So you can see in the loop here, the snow that moved through areas like Chicago. Now we're still seeing some rain in areas like upstate New York. We will likely see that through the Northeast as we go through Friday. On the West Coast, some rain and snow for the Pacific Northwest, and another system on the way there as well. As we look at our futurecast for Friday morning, areas like Portland, Maine, Boston, likely going to be a wet start to the day, a wet commute. So be mindful of that on the roads, but it really doesn't stick around all that long. In areas like Maine, you might have some rain and snow around till about lunchtime, but after that, things clearing out ahead of the next system that'll be developing as we go into the weekend. Looking at our temperatures across the country for Friday, 51 in Minneapolis with some cloud cover, windy in Chicago, a high of 59. A little bit of a cool down after the cold front moves through on the East Coast, but not cold. These are just seasonable temperatures for this time of the year, in the mid 60s across the Southeast, 57 in Denver, 84 in Phoenix, and some rain in Seattle. Likely to see more of that as we get into the second half of the weekend, but a little bit of a break on Saturday, 74 in Memphis on Saturday, along with Atlanta, and a cool down for Chicago, high of only 39 by Saturday afternoon.
If you're just joining us, here's what you need to know. President Donald Trump signs an executive order to begin dismantling the Department of Education. However, shutting the department down completely will require Congress's approval. And the NTSB has issued 4 urgent safety warnings in connection to the investigation into the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. It includes recommending 68 bridges across 19 states conduct a vulnerability assessment. And the first round in the men's NCAA basketball tournament began Thursday and continues Friday. The national championship game is April 7th. That's what you need to know. A new urgent warning from the National Transportation Safety Board. It says there are currently 68 bridges in 19 states that have not conducted recommended checks to determine the likelihood of collapse due to a vessel collision. And Spectrum's Chris Welch joins us now. Chris, what are we learning?
Yeah, kind of a scary story here, Sharon. Look, the bridges on this list actually include some of the biggest and the busiest in the country. We've got California's Golden Gate Bridge, Michigan's Mackinac Bridge, and 15 bridges in New York and New Jersey. Now, we want to be clear here. This does not mean the 68 bridges on this list are at risk of collapse due to vessel collision, but it means their level of risk of collapse is unknown. Now, this information all came from a press conference Thursday afternoon held by the NTSB. It's all part of its update on the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. So let's back up for a minute. In 1991, national guidelines were established where bridge owners were recommended to do a mathematical risk assessment. Those guidelines were reissued in 2009. Well, the Maryland Transportation Authority, which ran the Key Bridge, never conducted one of these assessments. Had they done one, according to NTSB Chair Jennifer Homendy, the state would have found the bridge to be 30 times greater than the recommended risk threshold. And what's worse, she says, is that Maryland served on the committee that issued these guidelines in the first place.
They were on the AASHTO Executive Committee in 1991, and they were on the subcommittee that developed the 1991 guidance and the 2009 update. It says very clearly on page 3, you should do the same calculation and risk assessment and put protective measures in place for your existing bridges before this guidance came out, so there's no excuse.
All right, so Chris, 30 bridge owners, is there any repercussions or recourse if they do not get these assessments completed?
Look, since technically these are just recommendations, granted they are urgent recommendations, they do say, though, that they will be following up individually with all of these bridge owners.
Very good, and hard to believe Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed almost a year ago now.
Crazy, right?
Unbelievable. Chris Welch, thank you. And more bad news for Elon Musk Thursday. U.S. regulators are recalling nearly all Tesla Cybertrucks, marking the 8th recall to the truck since it hit the roads. The recall covers more than 46,000 Cybertrucks. It warns an exterior panel that runs along the left and right side of the windshield can detach while driving. An airline mechanic from Atlanta is the latest American to be freed by the Taliban. George Glesman was abducted more than 2 years ago while traveling through Afghanistan as a tourist. He is the third American detainee to be released by the Taliban since January. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Qatar was instrumental in securing his release. Glesman's release was part of what the Taliban has described as a normalization of ties between the U.S. and Afghanistan. The Delta plane that flipped over in Toronto last month was descending at a high speed. That's according to an initial report. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada found the aircraft's alert system indicated the plane was going approximately 155 miles per hour, less than 3 seconds before touchdown. The plane's right landing gear folded and the wing detached from the fuselage, releasing the jet's fuel, which caught fire as the plane slid along the runway. Everyone on board survived, though 21 were hospitalized. The investigation continues. The International Olympic Committee elected Kirsty Coventry as its 10th president, making her the first woman and African in the role. The Zimbabwe sports minister will also be the youngest ever to take on the position at 41 years old. She officially takes charge June 24th after incumbent Thomas Bas steps down, following his 12 years at the top. And before becoming a member of the IOC, Coventry was a standout swimmer for Zimbabwe, winning 7 of the country's 8 Olympic medals. As the NCAA tournaments tip off, so does sports betting. Just ahead on Spectrum News, the efforts to protect athletes from harmful gambling behaviors.
For the millions of school-age children across the country, the state of their schools can have a lasting impact on their health and well-being.
The majority of school districts aren't doing comprehensive regular water quality testing.
As CO2 levels rise in a space, cognitive function takes a direct decline.
We visit 2 school districts working to create safe and healthy environments for their students.
Watch Exploring Your Health, Curing Our Classrooms, available on the Spectrum News app.
Starting a business is hard. You have to stay connected at all times.
As we've been growing the studio, Spectrum's been there every step of the way. I'm always able to make the phone call that I need. I'm able to shoot that text message or that email. Every vital piece of equipment that we have here uses Spectrum.
Fast, reliable internet, starting at $40 a month, backed by the Spectrum commitment to keep your business connected.
I tell my son, I love you every single day. I love you. My dad has never said that to me. Not because he doesn't love me, but because culturally it wasn't comfortable for him. Now that he's a grandfather, he says, I love you to my son every time he sees him. My advice to all the fathers out there, forget the cultural restrictions. They grow up way too fast for you to waste even a single precious moment.
Food isn't just fuel to live, it's fuel to grow. My family relied on public assistance to help provide meals for us. These meals fueled my involvement in theater and the arts as a child, which fostered my love for acting. The Feeding America network of food banks helps millions of people put food on the table. When people are fed, futures are nourished. Join the movement to end hunger, and together we can open endless possibilities for people to thrive. Visit feedingamerica.org/actnow.
Thanks for sticking with us for your Weather on the Ones. I'm meteorologist Brittany Hamilton. We're looking at our departure from normal map, so how much warmer or cooler we are compared to average. You see a lot of red on the map here, most spots, especially going into the end of the week and the weekend, like Kansas City, Albuquerque, as well as Houston, running between 5 and 10 degrees warmer than average. And also we'll see that warm up spreading across parts of the East Coast, a little cooler than average in areas like Seattle and then Billings for Saturday. Now, as we look at the big picture here on satellite and radar, we've been watching the system moving in on the west, and also the low pressure that's moving through the Great Lakes region, also expected to bring some rain as we go into the northeast by the time we get into Friday, and clearing out from there, but another system will develop right after that. We're also keeping an eye on Saturday. While this is a low-end severe risk, a 1 on a scale of 1 to 5, this does include areas like Kansas City, central Missouri, so this is not expected to be a widespread outbreak like what we saw last weekend, but still the chance for some rumbles of thunder. We could have some gusty winds with this as well, so we are keeping an eye on that. Looking at Saturday across the rest of the country, areas like Kansas City, 67 and cloudy. The rain and storms potentially for Kansas City likely coming late Saturday night. 74 in Memphis, 74 in Atlanta, so you do see a little bit of a warm up across parts of the southeast. 53 in Boise. We will get a break from the rain on Saturday in Seattle with temperatures in the 50s, but the rain returns on Sunday in Seattle. 75 in LA. We'll see the chance for some rain, maybe a wintry mix in Minneapolis by Sunday. High of 52 in Chicago with rain and storms, and Memphis in that bullseye again to see some storms. And we are keeping an eye on the potential for severe weather for Sunday as well. That would include areas like Memphis. As we look at the futurecast here, as we go through into Friday and Saturday, the system moving through parts of the Pacific Northwest moves a little more interior, giving us some more snow in areas like Idaho. And then that next system moving through the Great Lakes and the Midwest, bringing some rain and snow and moving back through the Northeast as we end the weekend, heading into early Sunday. Rainfall totals not looking exceptional in most spots. I would say Seattle and Pacific Northwest maybe seeing a little bit more, over an inch, but a lot of spots like Kansas City less than an inch. Louisville also less than an inch of rain, and same thing for New York.
March Madness is underway. Each year, tens of millions of people fill out brackets to pick the games, and guess who will be crowned NCAA basketball champs? It's also the largest betting event in the U.S. Spectrum's Ariel Wessler explores the impact it's having on student athletes and the game.
It's something that's never been done, according to the NCAA, picking a perfect bracket. In fact, the odds of picking all 64 teams correctly is 1 in, that's a lot of numbers, 9.2 quintillion. Despite those despicable odds, the NCAA says 60 to 100 million brackets are filled out every year, and typically they're free, so anyone can do it, even with limited basketball knowledge.
It's the underdogs who will win the games. It's the unknown. It's the pace of the games. It's a action-packed 3 weeks.
Lori Kalani with sports betting website DraftKings says they see a surge in business during March Madness.
It's an extremely busy time of year.
The American Gaming Association estimates Americans will legally wager $3.1 billion on the men's and women's college basketball tournaments this year. That's double the amount bet on the Super Bowl. Sure, filling out a bracket or throwing money on your favorite team can seem harmless, but a recent study commissioned by the NCAA found 1 in 3 student athletes reported receiving abusive messages from people with money on the line. In fact, 80% of that abuse targeted men's and women's basketball players during March Madness.
Only a loser would harass college athletes after losing a bet.
This year, the NCAA launched this new ad as part of its Draw the Line campaign. It calls attention to that abusive behavior by fans. Dr. Timothy Fong studies gambling and provides mental health care to student athletes at UCLA.
I've had some student athletes say to me, why should I even bother playing? What's the point? I'm no longer viewed as a person. I'm not even viewed as an athlete. I'm viewed as a stock, as a commodity.
Last year during March Madness, Armando Bacot, a basketball player for the University of North Carolina, said he felt sports betting had gotten a bit out of hand.
I thought I played pretty good last game, but I looked at my DMs and
Spectrum's Ariel Wessler joins us now. Ariel, what more can be done to improve the situation for college athletes?
Well, Sharon, through the NCAA's efforts, 18 states and Washington, D.C. have successfully banned prop bets in college sports. That's roughly half of the states that have legalized sports gambling. But Dr. Fong says we need stronger enforcement, better education for student athletes not to engage with those comments online. And he says we also need to consider whether betting operators and social media companies should be held accountable for that behavior on their platform, Sharon.
All right, so Ariel, I have to ask, I'm hearing all kinds of moans and groans from the control room, also some cheers. So who do you think will go all the way this year?
Best 3 weeks in sports. I've got my bracket right here. I've been a huge college basketball fan since I was a kid. My USC Trojans didn't make the tournament this year, but I've got Duke winning it all, Sharon. Fingers crossed.
I love it.
Go
I'm
Blue
a
Devils.
Duke fan, too. Yes. All right. Ariel Wessler in El Segundo, California. Thanks.
Thank you.
Austin Celtics are being sold for a record-setting $6.1 billion to a new owner. Officials say private equity mogul William Chisholm agreed to buy the defending NBA champions, making it the highest price ever paid for an American professional sports team. The deal still needs approval from the NBA's Board of Governors, which could take a few months. I'm Sharon Tazwell. Thanks for watching. Your Spectrum News in 90 is coming up right after this short break. Stay with us.
Friday nights, The Big Deal with Errol Lewis, where Spectrum News' local political journalists break down the most important issues shaping our nation.
Our journey towards improving mental health doesn't always present a clear path. Every Thursday on Your Mental Health, we listen to voices across our communities, discussing the challenges of everyday life and presenting accessible resources to guide us along the path to our well-being, providing hope and empowering choices that light the way to a healthier you.
Your Mental Health with Dr. Nicole Clark, Thursdays on Spectrum News Plus, available on all your favorite devices.
It's game time at the arena, and 20,000 fans are looking for a win.
With an ultra-high-speed network and seamless Wi-Fi, fans can get in the door fast and share the game's best moments in real time. And with Spectrum Business committed to keeping them connected 100% of the time, they won't miss a second of the action. A secure, reliable connection from Spectrum Business means the fan experience is a guaranteed win.
Whether it's our stories, the warmth of our laugh, or our family's secret sauce, we all bring something different to the table. So make some space. The power of connection is waiting right outside your comfort zone. Learn how you can help strengthen your community at belongingbeginswithus.org/teamup.
Weather can be beautiful, inconvenient, and at times powerful. And it affects everything we do. At Spectrum News Plus, our weather experts update you with the information and the context you need so you can better plan your day. And we do it every 10 minutes. We're the calm in the storm. Weather on the Ones on Spectrum News Plus, exclusively on Spectrum. And get your weather anytime on the Spectrum News app. Spectrum News Plus, local stories, connecting communities. Streaming now.